Hi, YouTube family. Lisa A. Romano here, the life coach. And today I want to talk to those of us, those wounded adult children who are kind of confused as to where they fit in. For adult children of alcoholics, it's kind of simple. We can figure out that, yeah, mom or dad was an alcoholic and therefore we qualify as ACOAs. And so, we go on the internet or we go into the libraries or whatever. I don't even know who goes to a library anymore, dear one, but whatever. We start researching ACOA stuff, and we find that there's a large group of us that are out there, and there are group meetings that we can attend, and there's especially recently there's a plethora of information out there that we can begin relating to, but there's a whole segment of wounded adult children out there that don't have their own groups to go to, and they sort of like don't know where they fit in. And part of the my journey is to help bridge those gaps between adult children from homes that were just purely dysfunctional, and um, to help anyone out there who feels like they came from a family that was kind of off, and who feels like they were impacted and affected in a negative way by the way that they were raised, but don't have a group to associate themselves with. I mean, what do you do if you're like, you're the daughter of a mentally ill mom? Like, what group do you go to? What do you do if like dad was a pacifist? What do you do if like dad was aloof and enabled mom and was afraid to confront mom? What do you do if mom was just like a crazy, aggressive, psycho person who couldn't get her emotions in check and who's just nasty and ornery and like picked on you all the time? I mean, what do you do if you came from that type of a home and there was no alcohol to point at or drug addiction to point at? For me, I mean, I didn't have any alcohol to point at when I was growing up. And so I did not know that it was my grandparents' alcoholism that affected my life. And that being raised by unrecovered adult children of alcoholics was like being raised by alcoholics because they thought like alcoholics. My parents thought like alcoholics. Everything was about control and denial, and we weren't allowed to like really like tell the truth in our house. We weren't allowed to talk about our feelings. Um, and so we felt very disconnected from ourself. And so you grow up, you're out in the society, and you don't have a self. So you don't know how to ask for things. You don't know how to get your needs met. You don't have a self. Like, no one checked in with me when I was a kid. How you doing, Lisa? What do you want for dinner? How was your day? There was none of that. There was sort of like we were just kind of like in the house and like waiting for an explosion to occur. Um, and we weren't allowed to say like this house is like stifling and like I'm waiting for the shoe to drop. Like, we weren't even allowed to say that. We had to pretend that we didn't feel what we felt. We had to pretend that we didn't feel like under wraps, and we had to smile on cue and make sure that we didn't step out of line, and all of my brother and my sister, we grew up very defensive. Why? Because our realities were always in question. So mom had her reality, dad had his reality, and then I had my reality, and my sister and brother had their own reality, and we're all competing for the right to have our own perception of what was happening in our home. So that makes for very defensive adults. Um, but this video is really, I want to create some type of a dialogue for people who happen upon my channel who find themselves not quite fitting in, I mean, I'm sure there are people who don't click on my channel because it's so geared towards ACOAs. And so someone who grew up with like a crazy ass mom who like was jealous of her daughter, and let's say you're the daughter, you might skip over the channel because mom wasn't an alcoholic or a drug addict. And so why would you look at a YouTube video for an ACOA? But if you studied what happens to adult children of alcoholics, if you study our symptomology, there's so much that you could relate to in terms of feeling invisible, not feeling heard, growing up in a home that was unpredictable, constantly juggling a new coping skill, just trying to get through the day, feeling like you were living in a war zone and no one even paid attention to that, feeling like completely like separated from these beings that were supposed to take care of you, feeling like you had nobody on your side, like in your family, like there was no one that was looking out for you. You were completely alone. Um, Dealing with people who are emotionally not right. They are explosive, they are unpredictable, they are aloof, and it's very confusing. What do you do if you're like a child who had like a crazy dad, like was screaming and yelling and domestically abusive, and mom like didn't confront it? And what do you do if you had a dad who like was abusive towards you, but mom tolerated it and she didn't protect you? Like, where do you go when you're that adult child? you know um and so what I like to do is begin at least talking about it in my own way, so that anyone who happens upon my channel who feels sort of like disconnected from self, and maybe your life is not working out well and you just can't figure out what you're doing wrong, um, I'm just hoping that this type of a channel that I have helps you understand that you can learn so much from studying what it is to be an ACOA, because we came from homes that just were not functional. We came from homes where everything was very unsettling. We walked around on eggshells, and the walls in our home were made of jello. And unfortunately, nobody in the freaking house even acknowledged that that was going on. So that made us disassociate sometimes. Like, we, just to survive the non-reality, or just to survive the reality that no one was validating our perception of the craziness, lots of us disassociated, and we developed like really weird, bizarre coping skills. But I say hallelujah for coping skills, because, I, for one, I used to count in my head. I would memorize license plates. I would count on my finger the letters to a sentence. And, at the time, if somebody was inside my head, they think that kid is messed up. But in reality, I was protecting myself. Like, I was aware that I felt disconnected, and being able to float away in my head helped me survive feeling so disconnected. And so, if anyone out there is struggling with any type of shame associated with those types of coping skills, I say pat yourself on the back, dear one. That's the way you psychologically survive some crazy ass stuff. So don't beat yourself up. There is, at the end of this, you come to a point where you realize that there is absolutely nothing wrong with you except what was done to you, and you're not responsible for what was done to you. You're not. You came into this world a divine creature, and you're still a divine creature. So you are divine, and there really is a divine order to the nature of the being that you are, and to the nature of the world. There really is a divine order. This world is indifferent. The universe is indifferent. No one's out to get you. It's truly cause and effect. So if you were born to dysfunctional people, then you were dysfunctionally programmed, and until you figure that out, lots of your life is going to be dysfunctional. Now, we can, for me, I sat around for a long time complaining, like, that's not fair, this should have never happened to me. And then when I finally realized, like, well, that's not doing me any good, I really need to change. And I got really humble, and it was then that I understood most, that scripture that says only the humble shall inherit the kingdom of heaven. Because it was when I got humble that I started asking the right questions, and I started reaching out for help, and my life began to shift and change. So, this is just a 10-minute video, it looks like, about us helping bridge the gap between we ACOAs from dry homes as well as actively alcoholic homes, and those of us that we know, our sisters and our brothers out there who are wounded adult children from dysfunctional homes. And I'm encouraging all of you to begin dropping the idea that we're separate from other people who are wounded. So if you know a bulimic, if you know an anorexic, if you know a sex addict, if you know a codependent, if you know someone who is, did I say shopaholic? I'm not sure. If you know someone who is stealing, someone who's addicted to painkillers, there's a reason why, dear one, we are in those experiences. If you know someone who is a woman who's depressed, um, or a man who's depressed, if you know someone who's having, multiple affairs, um, you know, I, there's a reason we as human beings do these things, and it's not because we are, innately flawed. It's because of something that happened to us along our way. And it's because we were not taught to honor self, that we don't honor self. And we end up doing things that we don't have to do in order to survive. So, thank you very much for listening to my YouTube video today. Please check my stuff out at www.healingselfesteem.com. My books are available on Amazon and Barnes & Noble and audible.com. And really cool, at audible.com, you can actually download my books for free with their free trial, which is, I think, a phenomenal deal. I look forward to reaching out to more of you in my teleclass and my upcoming webinar, which is March 8th, going to stream live on YouTube. That should be fun. Take care, everybody.